And where was I? I lost my train of thought. Yeah, when I was in prison, and I told the other prisoners how I'd been detained in April of 22 and told in no uncertain terms not to leave the country, the prisoners laughed. And they said, "You idiot. They were leaving the door open for you to leave. They wanted you to leave. You know, less hassle for them." And me, of course, you know, retrospectively, it's obvious. But at the time, I said, "No, I can't do anything. They're telling me to stay, so I must stay." You know, like an idiot. That's simple as that. So anyway, insofar as my current, status of being out on bail, and the judge was very clear that I had to. I mean, it was very explicit. I couldn't leave the city. I couldn't leave the country. And I had to surrender my passports. I have two, the American and Chilean. And of course, they also confiscated these documents for my transportation. And yet, when I was released on bail, they gave me all the stuff back. They didn't put the electronic monitor, and they allowed me to keep my passports. And what's more, when I went to the SBU offices to retrieve my driver's license and my registration cards and my Chilean identity card, they asked me, you know, and do you have any identification other than this stuff? "Oh yeah, I have my passports." "Oh, and you didn't surrender them?" "No, I have it right here." I said, like an idiot. And they were like, "Oh, okay." And so these are the options that I have. Since I know I'm going to be found guilty and I will be sent to a prison labor camp, and because of events that happened in prison where I was extorted for a sizable amount of money, I will be sent to a prison labor camp come my court date. That's inevitable. Okay? And there won't be any suspended sentence and there won't be any mercy, all because of my YouTube videos. I mean, I want to emphasize this, you know. In the indictment, if you read it, you will see that the prosecutor himself says that I committed no crime against any person or property, and that my crimes are literally speech crimes, saying things that the government doesn't like. Ukraine is supposed to be this big democracy, that it wants to join the European Union and because it has European values, European democratic values. What higher value does a democracy have than free speech? My case is all about free speech. And I spent, 2 months and change in a maximum security prison. And by the way, when I say, okay, well, let me finish that point. I spent 2 months and change in a maximum security prison over things that I said, opinions I gave regarding publicly available information that is undisputed. This is the epitome of free speech, and yet I went to prison for it, and I will likely go 5 to 8 years to a prison labor camp where, by the way, everybody in the CISO prison, the investigative prison where I was at, none of them wanted to go to that labor camp because they all said it's a death sentence, okay? And so I'm going to be sent for 5 to 8 years because of YouTube videos that I made. Is that democratic? Does that sound like, European values to you? Sorry if this video is a little bit disorganized, because I'm a little bit stressed out, but the choices I realize are two. Either go to a prison labor camp and die there. Because like I said, I'm 55, I have a heart condition, so as it is, I'm not going to live much longer. And 5 to 8 years at a prison labor camp, I'll be dead. I'll be killed off by the labor, I suppose. And if not, I will be killed on the inside, because what happened while I was at CISO, I realized that the let me backtrack a little. While I was in CISO, I was extorted for a great deal of money, $70,000 to be precise. Now, how did this happen? Well, through various clues and various information that I acquired, which I intend to describe in detail in a book about the whole thing, if I live long enough to write that book. But anyway, the point is, I realized that once they arrested me on May 1st, the SBU, of course, confiscated my computers, and they got into all of my accounts, which they hadn't done before. Because what had happened was that one of the computers, I had left it in my motorcycle, and when they detained me that time, they hadn't realized that I had left it in my motorcycle, because, you know, it has these, I don't know if you can see them, it has these suckers, right? And so, in that computer, that was my personal computer, with my they're all personal computers, but I mean, with my personal information, including my accounts. And while I was in prison, the SBU looked through my accounts and they realized that I'm not poor. Okay, I don't want to characterize it in any other way, but I have access to a lot of funds, and the way I live is fairly simply and low key. I don't even own a car because I was fortunate enough to earn a great deal of money as a writer when I was very, very young. And so I went through that phase of buying all the toys and all the crap that you really don't need to make your life happy. But I was young and I thought that I needed that crap. And so I bought it. And then I realized, of course, it didn't make me particularly happy. And now, as a much older and hopefully wiser man, I don't have any of that crap. I don't need it. And so the SBU had assumed that I was just some poor schmuck. But when they saw my accounts, they realized that I wasn't a poor schmuck. And so what happened was that they got the prisoners in CISO, in one of the 4 cells I was in, the last one, the worst one. It was 7 other prisoners and myself. And as soon as I arrived, they beat the shit out of me. And they tortured me that time. It started on June 21st at 1 p.m. and it lasted 30 hours. It included beatings, it included sleep deprivation. You know, I've been beaten up, so it's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's not fun. It hurts, yeah, sure. But, you know, when I was young, you know, yeah, I got into street fights and crap like that. And sometimes I won, and sometimes I got the shit kicked out of me. So the beatings I could handle, but when they started getting really, really pissed off at me because I kept insisting that I was just a journalist and I didn't have a pot to piss in and I had no money and I could not get them $70,000, thinking that they'd lay off, thinking too and realizing too that extortionists, when you give in to them and you pay them, then they'll come back the next day and want more. And they'll beat you some more for more money, right? And so, of course, I denied the fact. I said I was just a poor writer, that I was living in Ukraine because it was so cheap and all the rest of it, you know. Poor me, I don't have a pot to piss in. But they knew, and they kept insisting. And a very specific number, 70,000. And what really unnerved me was that in the hour maybe 25, 26, 2 of these thugs held my head, and one of them used a toothpick to scratch the whites of my left eye. And the other guy, the guy who actually spoke a little bit of English, said, you can read with just one eye, right? Not gonna lie, that really freaked me out. Anyway, after about 30 hours of this, I realized that there was no escape for me. By the way, the guards came in because they do a nightly check-in to see that everything's copacetic, you know? And the thing is, see, I saw that these guys had bribed those guards, bribed them with cigarettes and other things, because there's no money in the prison, but there are, you know, little perks, little this and that, knickknacks and whatnot. And so the guards who did the nightly check-in were on the take, and they were in league with the gangsters, the thugs, in my prison cell. And so I realized that this could last indefinitely. And so while I still had all my marbles, because the sleep deprivation really affects you. And I've just, out of idle curiosity, because I'm that way, a few years ago when I was living in Amsterdam, I tried to see how long I could go without any sleep. I went, I want to say like 60 hours. I remember being surprised by the hallucinations which came on around after 40 hours or so. And I thought they were pretty cool, but after about 60 hours, that's when I was just out of it. And it was just out of idle curiosity that I did it, because like I said, I'm kind of weird, what the fuck can I say? And so after 30 hours, I was hallucinating a little bit. I was like seeing writing on the floor when there was none, of course, and little things like that, like little wormies moving around, But anyway, the important point, I realized I'd have to give up the ghost because nobody was going to save me. And so I started negotiating and stretching out this payment that I had to make. Because you see, my bank accounts, in order to make a transfer, you need a little device that's a token that generates a number. So it's impossible to transfer any money without that little token. And those tokens are apps in my iPad and phone. And on top of that, because there's so much hacking going on from Ukraine, my banks, the websites to my banks to check certain accounts, the big ones, right? You can't access them from Ukraine. And my bank had to do special carve-outs, specific IP addresses that are tied to specific locations. And that's why, and those locations, of course, were far from Cecil Prison. That's why it was impossible for me to access those accounts, but it was possible for me to access a PayPal account that I had. Now, a PayPal account, it had quite a bit of money. It had $143,000 because it's just money that I've earned on my Patreon. And it's great money, but I do the Patreon more for the ego trip and getting more subscribers as opposed to needing the money. And so the money had just accumulated. I was just sitting there. And the SBU obviously found it and saw it. And that's why they were asking for that very specific number of 70,000, which is just about half of the amount of money in that account. Now, I don't know if they wanted to be nice about it and just take half, or if they were going to take half and they were going to pass me along to somebody else who would take the other half. I have no idea. But the point is, it became clear to me that the SBU contacted these gangsters, probably through the prison guards at CISA, and figured out, or basically had the prisoners in the fourth cell that I was in do the actual dirty work of getting the money out of me, see? Because you see, the guards, they never beat any of the prisoners. No, it's the prisoners who beat the other prisoners. In fact, after this 30-hour session, one of the thugs who had really, really hurt me, I mean, he hit me pretty badly, especially on the chest. He hit me like right here on the sternum, repetitively and so hard that it left this huge bruise. And by the way, the cell boss, the guy higher, berated him for having left a mark on me, because of course, the kind of torture that they want to do doesn't leave a mark. That's the point of it. See, because if it leaves a mark, then it's evidence, you see? So anyway, that prisoner who beat me so relentlessly over that 30-hour stretch, after, as we're trying to figure out a way to get this cash to these gangsters, these thugs,